station and other public television stations.
Tonight, the story of an American fugitive, Frank Terpil, who 16 months ago fled from a 53-year sentence for supplying arms to terrorists. He tells a story from exile in Beirut. Good evening, I'm Daniel Schorr. Terrorism looms in our era as a greater threat than war. It causes world leaders, including President Reagan, to live in suffocating cocoons of security. Terrorism operates from safe havens like Libya. Colonel Gaddafi's oil wealth buys the instruments of terror and the know-how to use them. Some of that comes from this country, American know-how at the service of America's enemies. Veterans of America's clandestine wars have turned to selling their skills and contacts in the marketplace of violence. Profiting from terror without suffering qualms takes a certain mentality. In the next 90 minutes, you will get to know one of the merchants of terror more intimately than has ever been possible before.
On the morning of Monday, December the 22nd, 1979, undercover detective Nicky Grillo reached the 27th floor of this New York hotel. On that morning, he was wearing a waiter's uniform borrowed from Forlini's restaurant. He entered this room. Inside was a squad under Detective Sergeant Merv Woike.
I was here that day with Sergeant Rosenzweig and 6 detectives. We brought all the equipment we thought we would need for that day, which included 4 shotguns. We also had, of those detectives, 2 of them were technical electronic surveillance detectives. They had been recording all the conversations that had taken place for the past 3 days in the adjoining room.
You put the liquid into the cooling system. You put it dead right into the top of the radiator. The car went about 40 foot in the air.
In the next door suite were 4 men. 2 of them were undercover detectives for the New York City Police, Jose Rad and Jimmy Rodriguez.
On the day of the arrest, we were all sitting in this room here. I was sitting right in this chair here, and Detective Jose Rad was sitting on the corner right there, and the 2 suspects were sitting at the end of the sofa. It was necessary that I receive a contract from them and that I give them $56,000, which I had in that drawer of that desk right there. And besides that, one of the suspects had a weapon that they were going to lend me so that I may assassinate someone that same evening. The key word was French cruller. And after I had given them the money and they gave me the contract and I received the gun, I came over to the telephone and I dialed 5, which is a blank line. I then ordered coffee, donuts, and a French cruller. At this point, from both doors, the door to my left and the front door, detectives came in with weapons and shotguns and arrested the 2 suspects.
Please, don't move! Do you understand? That's a shotgun behind your ear, motherfucker.
Unbeknown to the management and any of the hotel guests, the 2 suspects were led in handcuffs across the foyer. Two unmarked police cars were parked on 54th Street. The suspects were separated and driven under armed guard to Lower Manhattan and the New York criminal courts at 100 Center Street. They were fingerprinted and photographed in the squad room on the 9th floor. In New York police records, they are described as Terpil, Frank Edward, nickname None, date of birth November the 2nd, 1939, place of birth Brooklyn, New York, height 5'11", weight 215 pounds, hair brown, race white, and Corcola, George Gregory, nickname Gary, date of birth February the 9th, 1941, place of birth Detroit, Michigan, height 5'11", weight 175 pounds, hair blonde, race white. Shortly before midnight on December the 22nd, Frank Terpil and Gary Corcola were taken from their cells on the ground floor and arraigned in court. Bail was opposed by Assistant District Attorney Matthew Crossan.
I opposed bail because we found during our investigation that Frank Terpil and George Gregory Corcola were major suppliers of weapons and assassination devices to terrorists and terrorist groups all around the world. During the course of our investigation, we obtained irrefutable evidence that they had supplied and attempted to supply to our undercover detectives who were posing as Latin American terrorists a variety of weapons, including 10,000 British machine guns, a silenced sniper rifle, a silenced semi-automatic pistol, poisons, liquid explosives, explosive briefcases, and other devices of a similar nature.
After 3 bail hearings, a judge finally rejected Matthew Crossan's arguments, and on the 5th of January 1980, Frank Terpil and George Gregory Corcola were released on bail after each had posted a $100,000 bond. 4 months later, Frank Terpil was arrested a second time and committed to the federal penitentiary in Washington, D.C. Terpil and a man called Edwin P. Wilson were indicted by the federal authorities in Washington on charges including acting as an agent for a foreign power, to wit, Libya, transportation of explosives in foreign commerce, and conspiracy to commit murder. In Washington, a judge once more rejected the prosecutor's appeal and granted bail to Frank Terpil. With serious charges against him in Washington and New York, Terpil was free again. On September the 3rd, 1980, Frank Terpil and George Gregory Corcola, his co-defendant in New York, slipped out of the country for undisclosed destinations in the Middle East. The New York trial proceeded without them. The prosecution case was based on evidence obtained in a massive undercover operation. Rodriguez and Rudd had originally followed a tip-off from a man who was involved with the suspects in an illegal arms deal. The 2 Spanish-speaking detectives were simply substituted for South American buyers that Terpil and Corcola were expecting.
On the 15th of